Hi everyone, my name is Hector Figueroa. I am a NetSuite functional consultant in Hood River Consulting, NetSuite Alliance Partners. And in today's video, I would like to talk to you a little bit about workflows and what they do. This is what we will cover. We will set what is a workflow and the main uses of it, what are the most used actions, a few examples, and at last we'll see an approval workflow and how would it work. The first thing is, what is a workflow? I would define a workflow like a configurable no-code automation tool that allows you to control how records behave based on logic conditions, actions, and events. So this is a very complex workflow that you're seeing. When I mean that this is a no-code automation, is because NetSuite gives you this tool in order for users that do not know how to code, uh, can control, automate, make configurations, and make automations in NetSuite more easily and more user-friendly. The main uses are the following. Most people and most clients use workflows for approval processes in order to create approval workflows to have people approve or disapprove transactions depending on their level, meaning they have a boss, their boss have a CFO, and a CFO has CEO, and a purchase order needs to pass depending on the amount for two of them or three of them or just one of them. So we have levels, rules, conditions, etc. We also use workflows to enforce some rules. For example, to make a field mandatory, to restrict access to certain people to certain transactions, or maybe, for example, and this is a few examples, to prevent the saving of a transaction while some data is missed. Another use is to automatize fields values. In this, I mean to auto-populate fields depending on conditions or rules. For example, um, if I have a specific person going into a purchase order, I need to have them, the approver of the purchase order to be his or her supervisor. So the next approver field needs to auto-populate automatically via a workflow. And another of the main uses are notification, alerts, and reminders. In a workflow, depending on how big you want it to be, you can send emails. Depending on some events, you can um, show an alert saying, for example, that this field needs to be filled, and some reminders, for example, remind you to click on preview tags before saving, something like that. And of course, for conditional user interface behavior, for example, showing fields when we need to, or for example, if my CEO needs to see or should see a specific field on a specific record or transaction that nobody else should, you can do it by workflow or to hide sensitive information, for example, to erase from a specific person a bulk of fields. The most used actions in NetSuite are at a bottom, send email, set fields, and set fields are segregated into display type, mandatory, value, and label. So I will be teaching an example of each of one, and we can set them all depending on the events that NetSuite have. NetSuite has a few events, for example, before the record submit, after the record submit, before record loads, at entry, after field sourcing, and a few more. These events all happens while the user is interfacing with NetSuite, so those are the events. For example, here we have an add button example. At the left, we can see that we have the HR button as a box, and inside of that box, we can set different actions. So in the middle, we can see the configuration of the action itself. So we can say, for example, that there's a condition to be applied, that the user role that would see this button would only be administrator and the HR role. These would trigger even before the record loads. So as soon as you enter into the record, you will be able to see the button. The button, you can name it as HR approval button. And the result of this configuration can be seen in the third image, where you can see the HR approval button as soon as you save the transaction. This is another example of one of the actions that a workflow can make. So in my candidate journey workflow, we have configured to send an email as soon as the HR approves the candidate that is being processed. So in this case, for example, we send the person who is in charge of HR, who is the specific sender, as you can see in the second image, will be sending an email at that specific point when the HR approver approves the candidate, and it will send it directly to the supervisor of the current record. In this, you can also create the body of the email, meaning that you can pick up, for example, the name of the candidate or anything inside of any transaction or record, and pick it up in order to add it into this body of the email. If you do not want to use this, you can use an email template inside NetSuite. The difference between of them, the template will allow you to have more characters than the body of the email inside the workflow that says custom. This is an example of how the email arrives. For example, as I have configured, it goes to the supervisor. I have blacked out the names for obvious reasons, and then I can see that it has picked up the name, it has picked up the email of the candidate, it has picked the position, and even the score that we have given them. And one thing that I didn't mention is that you can attach a file, or you can attach the record itself. So if my supervisor has access to NetSuite, he can go and click View Records, and the transaction will appear on his computer more easily and more user-friendly. Then the set fields. So the set field display types is, for example, to have it one hidden, meaning that you will not see the field. Inline, meaning that the field will be there, but you will not be able to see it because you have an automation going on. Disable is meaning that it is there, but it's grayed out, meaning that you can edit that. This is most usually in order to have a specific field that you do not want to change almost never. And the normal display type. For example, if I have a configuration and I have created a field that his nature is to be disabled, I can bring it back to normality and open it for everybody if I click on normal. I have the set field the set field mandatory, meaning that if I pick up a field inside my record or my transaction, like hire date, I have to make it mandatory at a specific point. So I click on the mandatory. Also, if I have a form in which the field is mandatory, I can come here and my workflow, and for a specific reason, I do not want it to be mandatory 10% of the times that we go into that specific form, we can unmark it and make the action with the mandatory checkbox unmark, and that would bring the field into not mandatory, depending on what you want and the conditions that we have seen before that you can add into the workflow. The third one is to set field value. In the set field value, what we can do is pick up a specific field. For example, in this approval process, we can select if the HR has approved. When he clicks the bottom of HR approved, we go to the HR approved box or field, and we select a static value. Depending on the nature of the value, if, for example, the field is free form text, we can set up a text. But if it's a list, we can set up as a static value, and then in the selection, select what of the options do you want it to set for that specific field. If it's a date, we can select date. If we want to fulfill this, fill this field from information from another record related to that specific transactional record, we can mark the from field, and then from the current record, pick up some information, or from any other record that is inside the same record or transaction. And if we want to make it even a little more complex and have more conditions, we can set up a formula. These are usually with the SQL formulas that are good to use in workflows. And the last one is the set field label. So for example, if I have a specific person that wants to see a specific field with a different name that the usually shown, we can change it. So for example, if I set up that only administrator, all administrators should see the field called candidate email as correo de candidato, we can set it up here, and the name, once I get into NetSuite and open my transaction, I will be seeing correo de candidato instead of candidate email. This is in order for in the case that two different people want to see this field with two different names. So in that case, this is very useful, and you don't need to change it or create another field, but only to change the name. And the approval workflow. I wanted to show you in order for you to see that they are not only one box at a time, as you are seeing here at the left, but you can set it up and create a whole workflow. So this is, for example, in the initiation state, we can add to set the approval status to pending approval. And then we can send it out to only BC the buttons of approval to the person who created a transaction. So in initiation, we can have set field value and add buttons for approval or rejection. And then in the arrow, we can set it up to trigger it only when the approval button is clicked. And then we can have the purchase offers approval. In there, you can set it up to still pending approval. You can set another button called supervisor approval, and you can set it up in order to have this state with information of setting up fields depending on what you need, or the conditions of only the supervisor of the person who created to approve this transaction. And you can add another level for manager approval, and you can set it up and make it back to the top again if the rejection button is clicked. So you can see that even though it was approved at the first instance, you can disapprove it and make it go back and again until it's approved. So inside of this workflow, we will be able to find, or we can set up different set field values, set mandatory fields, add buttons, send emails. In the case, for example, that you want, once the officer approves this transaction, automatic email will be sent to the manager, and so on. So this is very useful because you can set up different actions in different states depending on literally the nature of the processes that we used to do in person, but do it automatically in your system through your computer. So this is much faster, and it triggers many things at once. I think that's all for today. I didn't want to go before I invite you to contact us in our hoodriverconsulting.com site, and invite you to follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. On our website, you will be able to find all the solutions that we bring to the table, meaning implementation, consulting, trainings, and so many more. What models do we use, or what do we work with? ERP, CRM, and Suite Commerce. Some of our clients or our integrations that we have, the industries that we have worked with, meaning manufacturing, services, startups, retail, and many more. The product that we offer, meaning also localization for your suite, your tax regulations in your countries. A specific site for our NetMint site that has e-commerce integrations with WooCommerce, Amazon, Shopify, Mercado Libre, etc. And of course, our success story of the clients that we have worked with before and we have successful implementations with. And at last, we have a place where you can leave your name, your email, your company name in order for you to contact us. And a little bit of why should you trust us. So thank you very much, and I hope you can see us in another video very soon.